don't be dishonest in a way where you stand out. Like if you have no user agent string, like doing doing things like that just make you stand out even more. You think you're hiding because it doesn't say your information, but they don't care about the information. They care about who you are.
The trick is to use Windows user agent string.
Yeah. Yes.
Then you're lost in the masses. But talking about the federated learning of cohorts, so the private attribution is coming from a group called the Private Advertising Technology Community Group from the W3C. And one of their proposals right now is something called Topics API. And that is more akin towards like tracking your interests and stuff like that. That really needs to be opt-in, because that shouldn't be in browsers, and that's going to be a big issue that's coming up. Google essentially, what they did is they reworked their proposal on FLOC and reworked it towards that topic API thing, where essentially your browser would send a header, in every request saying what topics you're interested in. So there's still some things to look into, which are bad on the privacy side of things. But private attribution isn't really one of them, because if advertisers have something in place where they can have at least their basic metrics that they kind of are required to have to run their business, then we can go towards legislators and ask to ban that kind of pervasive, invasive personal tracking that we have right now everywhere. But we need to have the alternative in place for them to capture their metrics, or else what's going to happen is you're going to have lobbyists come in and say, well, we can't ban that because then we can't have a business. We can't charge our customers. So yeah, it's a step in the right direction, but there's still some other things that we kind of have to be careful of, which are not part of that whole private attribution proposal from Mozilla.
Yeah, the issue that I took with a lot of people talking about this, especially Mozilla, when they were talking about it, is they were describing it as the solution, but in none of their communication did I see them talking about doing the legislation part. They're like, okay, if we do this, businesses are going to use this instead because it gets them information that allows them to do an ad campaign, which I just fundamentally disagree with. It's good there with the regulation. You need that regulation in place so they don't do the other thing. But if you just have the PPA there, all that's being done is you just have another route to get information they were already getting through these other means, and nothing going in place to stop those other means. And this, I think, is where a lot of people really got caught up with it, and like why I got caught up with it as well. If they put front and center, like, this is step one, I think I would have had a very different opinion of it.
Yeah, and I totally agree. But I'm not sure Mozilla should be the one leading the charge. At some point, I think we have an individual responsibility to contact our legislators and ask for something to be changed. Mozilla, unfortunately, did purchase an ad business.
Yeah, the timing on that,
it's more,
that's I think also part of the reason. Like, a lot of people are sort of distrusting of Mozilla right now anyway. Like, they've had a questionable track record over the past 10 years, and then the ad stuff, the ad tech company as well. So it's like all these little things building up, and this was just, I guess, one of the ways it all kind of exploded.
Yeah, absolutely. But even if you're like really pessimistic, the worst case scenario is that Mozilla sees the writing on the wall and then one alternative in place when the legislators are eventually going to ban invasive tracking. At least in the EU, I don't know what's going on in the United States. They don't seem to care about that kind of thing. But there is some regulation in certain parts of the world where privacy is coming back. Individual privacy is coming back. So we've seen GDPR in the EU. In Quebec, where I live, we have Law 25. Which has a very nice little thing that says, well, the default should be the most private options on all pieces of software. That's essentially the summary of it. And there's other legislations as well in California and stuff like that that are coming up.
CCPA.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have much hope for the rest of the United States, unfortunately. It would be really good, though, if they did, because since most companies are based there, that's when we would see the biggest shift. But like anywhere else in the developed in developed countries, like we should push for legislations and get that changed. I think we have to do our part as well, and I don't necessarily want Mozilla to lead the charge for us, because then we might end up with a compromise that isn't exactly like doesn't have our best interest in mind.
No, I don't think necessarily has to lead the charge, but as we were saying before about their communication, I think at least paying lip service to like, hey, go contact your legislators about, like having that anywhere in their original post or the Reddit post, at least mentioning that, like, maybe they're not the ones that are fighting this in court. Like, that are totally understandable, but making it clear, like, what it is that is being done here, I think was just something very clearly missed out.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if they would have been honest and would have said, "Oh, we're seeing the writing on the wall, so we're working on and getting those basic metrics in a way that is respecting of user privacy," I think would have gone a long way. But right now, it's just, "Oh well, it's an experiment. You don't have to worry. It's not that big of a deal." Their communication was just horrible. Period. And that's unfortunate because there are some government actors who are part of the private advertising technology community group that are working on those standards. Notably, there's 3 representatives, I think, of the UK government that are part of that group. So there's clearly some work being done towards improving user privacy, but it feels like nobody wants to communicate that, and yeah, it's a bit sad.
One take I did see from a couple of people is Mozilla should sort of ignore the whole advertising thing and position themselves as this private browser that ignores all the advertising. They try to get away from all of it as much as possible. Like, you're never gonna, basically like the Doomer approach to it, you're never gonna change the way that tracking works, you're never gonna stop individual tracking. So Mozilla should build a browser that tries to stop that as much as possible. Like, what do you think about that stance?
If Mozilla would have enough of a contributor base that wouldn't be Mozilla employees, and it would be purely a community-run product, sure. But that's not what Mozilla is. And to be completely honest, they tried to launch some products to get some revenue in, and I don't think any of their products caught on, to be completely honest. So at some point, something needs to finance the development of Firefox. Something needs to compete against Chromium and Blink. And if that's not Mozilla, I don't see anybody else doing it. So painting yourself in the corner, saying, "Okay, no, we're not going to acknowledge that advertisement exists. We're not going to acknowledge that this industry is funding, let's be honest, quite a large part of the web, of the information repository that we use today." It's not viable. It simply isn't viable for them, and I don't think it's viable for us as users either. So the middle ground is a good position to have. However, I would have wished we had I'm going to use an out of the box window. Let's put it that way. When we install the updates, I would have asked if we wanted to opt in or opt out.
Yeah. You read through the Reddit post, yeah?
From the CTO, yeah, I did.
Yeah, let me find the exact quote, because I do think that is the pinnacle of what I mean by they just don't know how to communicate to their users. Where was it? What is the specific dialogue? Where is it? Oh, they use modal that's the word they use. We consider modal consent dialogues to be user hostile distraction from better defaults, and do not believe such an experience would have been an improvement here. I do think there is a part of that is true. They are worse than better defaults. At the end of the day, you want to have good defaults so users don't feel the need to configure everything. But I think in this case, it doesn't necessarily apply. Like, that applies to things like hey, should I have the bar be at the top? What size should icons be? You know, should I have I don't know, just random other features that Firefox has like that. For that, yes, you want to have a good default where users have Firefox and it feels like out of the box it's good enough. Like you install the GNOME desktop out of the box, it's good enough. KDE, good enough. Yeah, there are things you might want to tweak, but it's not like, you know, you install like a random little window manager where you have to write 1,000-line config file before anything is even remotely functional. But I don't think there's anything wrong with asking a user if they want to opt into this scenario. The reason why they didn't is because they knew most people would probably click no.
No, I think they're seeing necessarily. I don't think that. I think they're mostly comparing it to what's happened with cookie consents on websites, right? So you got those old banners that show up on every single website. The issue with those is that most of them are user hostile in the way that if you want to reject, you have 2 clicks to do, and if you want to accept it, you just have 1 button. And that's a problem because most people are going to do the accept. They're going to opt in because, well, that's the easiest option, right? But if you look at a place where opt-in, opt-out consent is well implemented, is in the KDE welcome wizard. So when you click through all the options, one of the last screens that you get is the telemetry, where you have a slider and you can select what amount of a telemetry that you want. The options are clear. As a user, it takes 30 seconds to configure, and you don't have to go click I refuse on a slew of like 20 options for each individual cookie.
Right.
So there's ways to do opt-ins without being user hostile in a way that you give value to the user. And I kind of understand where he's coming from if he's using that specific example where users were kind of like, everybody has consent fatigue at some point, and most users nowadays, they visit a website, they just say, oh, accept all cookies, I don't care. Okay,
that's fair.
And that's, again, bad communication. I think that's the example that you wanted to use. But yeah, to me, just showing a screen saying like, okay, well, do you want to accept like just add measurements? Do you want to choose between like individual behavioral tracking? Don't word it that way. Saying like personalized advertisements. Do you want to just have measurement or nothing whatsoever? If one option would be bigger and it would be well explained, I don't necessarily think that most people would opt out. Okay, I mean, us lot would, but
yeah. No,
we're
that's
not the
fair.
target audience.
No, I get what you're saying there.